I myself wanted to contribute to what I teach, which is emotional resolution and peace. And so specifically around this topic, around what's happening currently and stuff. And so I'm going to first talk about me coaching in my what I do mainly when I work as a coach. And I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again for those of you who are new. I mainly work with families, mainly parents, dealing with addiction and severe behavioral health problems in their home. That's what I deal. That's who I coach. And specifically, what I do is they come to me or come to the organization that I work for to help them communicate with their loved one because their loved one's acting very erratic. Their loved one's coming from strong anxiety, from strong, uncontrollable emotions. And when they get like that, it affects their personality. They begin talking in very angry, self-righteous, blaming, accusatory language. Nothing satisfies them. Sometimes when the mental health and the behavioral health gets so severe, they can have, in mental health terms, what's called a personality disorder. And these are not meant to give derogatory terms to anyone at all. It's just a descriptor. I myself am autistic, ADHD, PTSD. I was diagnosed with mild borderline personality disorder and narcissism. So I know these disorders. I know, well, these conditions. I don't want to call them disorders. I see these as more descriptors. I'm just giving you a label to help you understand the kind of people that I help. And so I feel it applies in this particular situation with what's happening in our country right now. And so I'll say it as simply and plainly as I can. So I tell people, and I'm going to do my best to look at the chat and try to respond to comments. But again, just so you know, if I feel I can respond to it, as a person who considers himself a meditation and emotional resolution coach, if I can respond to it and maintain that mission, that goal that I have, then I'll respond to it. If I if I can't respond to it, then I won't. So please stay on topic. What I'm hoping to do, again, I'm not trying to choose sides in what's happening in the country, but I'm trying to use what God-given abilities and gifts that I have to help and contribute. When I say contribute, I mean contribute to people's peace of mind, mental stability, and emotional resolution. Because I've seen what it happens when you come from intense, out of control, dysregulated emotions. I was like that. And I can be like that, right? But these meditation techniques, these coaching protocols that I do helped to honestly, I feel, permanently de-escalate the emotional intensity of those more disruptive, volatile, egoic voices. So I could still have thoughts of anger, of us versus them, of feeling attacked. But because of the emotional resolution protocols that I teach here, that I've done on myself, that were done to me, the emotional energy, which is usually fear and anger, behind those voices that are telling you that you're being attacked, that you're under a threat, that you got to look out. I still have those thoughts, but the emotional intensity is like 50 to 90% less. And that's the key to being able to interact with people in this world. It's not to get rid of the thoughts, it's to de escalate the emotional intensity behind them, because that's the fuel that'll keep an unproductive, volatile argument going, is the emotions behind it. I mean, think about it. If you were really emotional, so I'll choose a really simple subject. If you were really emotional about baseball or football, and you're a big sports nut, well, like I am, and someone said that your football team, all the fans of your football team are idiots, but what if you're not a football fan? You don't even care about sports. Someone sees that you like a football team, like, all Philadelphia Eagles fans are idiots, but because you don't have any emotional interest in football at all, you might say, well, that's mean, but you're not going to react, right? Because the emotions won't be there. But if you consider yourself and identify yourself as an Eagles fan, those are fighting words. And as a drug counselor, I would work with people who would come in to my office with bruises and cuts on their face. And I'd ask them what happened. And they would say, I got into a fight with another guy at a bar. Why? Because he made fun of the Red Sox. He was a Yankees fan. And so what did you do? I cracked a bottle over his head. Wow. Like you almost killed him. And then they would say, well, I had to. They made fun of the Red Sox, man. How many times have you seen that? Alcohol doesn't help. That's why I don't drink anymore and all. So this is what happens when you have this identifying thought, I'm a Red Sox fan, and then something happens out there and you're really emotionally attached to that thought. That's the kind of stuff that could happen if you're emotionally dysregulated. Does everybody do this? No. No, not everybody does this. I'm talking about people whose emotions are so intense, though. I mean, all emotions and your ability to control your impulses around these emotions are all on a spectrum. Not everybody's the same. They realize that the human brain is like a thumbprint. Every brain is different. And so you might have one person who can get really emotional, but never react to that. The problem is they're going to look at somebody else and go, well, I got emotional. I didn't do anything. Why can't you do the same thing? Because their ability to control their impulses in their brain is further along the spectrum of being severe, not like you and stuff. So, not everybody can be, can do this thing where, you can be calm and da 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 da, and like, why can't you be like me and stuff like that? It's all about the emotions, how intense they are, and the dysregulation of them. So, what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to do a guided meditation protocol that is designed to de-escalate fear and anxiety permanently. That's what it's designed to do. Not just in this moment, feeling all blissed out and peaceful because you had a nice meditation and oh, feel the peace and isn't that nice? I'm not interested in helping somebody in 1 hour and having all the effects of it be done by the time you wake up and you're right back to you, who you are, volatile and emotional again. I was like that and I needed another solution. Okay. So when I do this work, I do it with parents mostly dealing with addiction in their home who are getting into constant emotional fights and arguments with their loved ones who are addicted, who are unreasonable, and they're emotionally out of control because they have behavioral and mental health issues. And so I do this protocol to de-escalate the parents' anxiety and fear. And when they engage with it, see, me doing the words in the protocol isn't what causes it to work. What causes it to work is the parent or the person doing the protocol saying, okay, I'll engage with it. I'll put aside my skepticism, my defensiveness, my doubt, because I'm desperate. My son or daughter's dying of drug addiction, and I need to be able to talk to them calmer than I am, and I can't. And so I'll engage with it. I will buy into it and do this protocol. And when they do, they report to me because I check up on them after a few days, after a few weeks, even a few months, even years later. I'm still friends with a few of them, and I've done this with, and they'll say, after what happened, and you did this protocol with me, which only took like an hour or two, after that, when my son or daughter got angry at me and would normally trigger this anxiety and fear and cause me to lash back, the fear was gone, or it was greatly reduced, like 90% gone. And I was able to sit there calmly and talk to them in a totally different way that didn't make the problem worse, you see. So I worked with people who need to de-escalate their anxiety and fear because they know if I keep on responding the same way to my son and daughter who's behaviorally has behavioral problems, they're going to use. Because I tell them, the reason your son and daughter is using is because they're feeling an emotion that they can't stand, and thus they want to squelch it, and so they're using. And so anything that gives them anxiety, the first impulse will be to use. And so the parents understand I cannot add to the anxiety in the room, but they're yelling at me. So what do I do? So I've worked with people in which they have a desperate vested interest in changing the way they do things, but they can't get themselves to do it because the emotions are too strong. And so when I was shown this protocol and it worked for me, I began using it with other people and they reported those kinds of results, not just a few days or weeks after. I'm talking like months, years after they would tell me my son is still out of control sometimes, but that peace that I found stayed with me. My entire personality is softer and lighter. I don't get as anxious, scared, or upset even when they act like this. Because I could tell you, like, I wouldn't have survived if I kept on acting the same way. So this is why I created a TikTok, an account like this to give this stuff out for free. And with the current political climate that's happening, people need this. Okay. So what I tell parents is this, because I ask them, so, okay, I do this protocol that helps you to resolve emotions. What's the emotion you want to work on? They always say the same thing, always, my anxiety or my anger, because those are the ones that they feel right on the surface. Right. And so, and I tell them, you're feeling this anxiety and anger because basically your mind is fearing the worst case scenario of that particular topic of like whatever you're in, whatever the problem is that's recurring for you, your mind is so scared of the worst case scenario, which is your loved one dying. All right. What mind wouldn't go nuts over that and stuff? But they can't afford to let that emotion get the better of them, even though they have this titanic fear of them dying. Right. So what I tell them though is, and I'm going to tell you guys this, what your mind is scared of is not the event. Your mind is actually not scared of the worst case scenario event. What it's scared of is the feelings that are going to come up, the emotions that are going to come up if that event actually occurs and comes to pass. So for parents I work with dealing with addiction in their homes, of course, the worst case scenario is their loved one dying. And I've had parents tell me, understandably, straight out, if he dies, I will never forgive myself. This is why I go crazy at night. I can't sleep. I will never forgive myself. I should have done something better. So what emotion is that? Guilt, self-loathing, grief, loss, and your mind will say, I may be feeling this for the rest of my life. And times 10, like the emotions that I'll feel will be so intense and it may never go away. I don't even know if I'll be able to survive it. Like that's the emotions that we're talking about here. And that's what I tell them is your loved one is actually your loved one. Your mind is not scared of the event. So let's look at the current political landscape. Your mind is actually not scared of the event. Your mind is scared of how the event's going to make you feel because the stronger and the more intense the feelings are, the more out of control your body's going to be, and you don't know what's going to happen, right? So it's really all about managing and de-escalating your emotions permanently. That's what I'm really interested in because when I work with parents in which they're dealing with their loved ones, it's a recurring, ongoing problem that lasts for years. And I don't want to tell them something like, oh, just, when they get angry like that, just tell them you need to go into the bedroom and meditate for an hour and tell them, hold your anger for a second while I calm down and do some yoga for 30 minutes. Who can do that? And then they have to do it again and again and again and again. Like that's impractical, for the clients that I work with and stuff. But I feel God blessed me by showing me something that was able to de-escalate the intense emotions of my ego permanently. So what am I talking about here? In psychology terms, it's been called an ego death. It somehow kickstarted an ego death, which helped me to understand what the ego does and why it's like that. The ego is your personality. It's what you use to think through problems and talk to people. But your ego holds on to and is the carrier of that which stores unresolved emotions, trauma emotions, maybe things from your past, maybe things from generational trauma that's not even yours. So when people tell me, I've always felt self-loathing ever since I can remember. I've always felt this terrible fear ever since I can remember, since I was a baby. That tells me that's pointing to generational trauma. It's very well possible these unresolved emotions are not even yours. It's been through human biology, and this is a proven biological fact, been genetically passed to you. That maybe your mother or your grandmother went through a trauma, didn't resolve it, and usually it happens when you're a child, and it got put into you. That's so when people tell me I've had this ever since I can remember. Okay, so that tells me it's points to generational trauma. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to do my best to do a meditation protocol that you can keep coming back to. I'm going to put it online. And the goal of it is to permanently de-escalate your anxiety. When I say permanently, like I said, after going through this, people have reported to me, it's been 5 years since I did this with you when I felt this emotional shift, and I still feel calmer. So I should tell you this. This does not get rid of your emotions. I'll say it again because I don't want, anybody to think like you're going to turn us into zombies here. This is not designed to get rid of your emotions. I do not want to get rid of your emotions. I do not want a bunch of zombies walking around not feeling emotional. That's not what this is. What it does is it resolves all the unresolved emotional emotions that the ego carries around. That's extra, right? And so once those things are resolved, the ego, your personality becomes softer, becomes lighter. And that's what people report to me. I feel energetically lighter as a result of this. Okay. And it's stayed with me. And I could, and I can't do it because of confidentiality, but I could, show you mothers that have said this to me, many of them, and so, and it worked on me, I should say. So it doesn't get rid of your emotions. It helps to resolve the unresolved trauma emotions, fear emotions, self-loathing emotions, all of the difficult, challenging emotions that the mind doesn't want to feel and pushes down, and then it becomes a part of your emotional personality. It resolves those, or greatly resolves those. So if I can get, the intensity of those unresolved egoic emotions down 100%, great. But lots of times that doesn't happen. It's more like 80%, 90%, or at worst, 50%. But people do report, yes, I still get emotional, but it's 50% less when triggered. And it's stayed with me. Okay. Um, that's one thing. The other thing is if your brain is designed with autism, ADHD, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia. If it's designed, when I say designed, I mean that's a genetically inherited neurophysiological condition. It affects the way your brain is shaped, and it affects the neurochemical makeup, and it affects the amount of nerve cells you have in your brain. These are all it's like the hardware of your brain. It doesn't change that. I should say this, right? It doesn't change if you are born with a naturally edgy, anxious brain. What it changes is all of that extra egoic energy that says things like, great, now you ruined my day. Now I'm going to feel terrible for the rest of my day. And this always happens to me and I hate it. And then you watch this person talk themselves into a panic attack. It gets rid of all those emotional thoughts, or it greatly decreases the emotions behind them. And so this body still, you know, is edgy. It's PTSD, ADHD, autism body. It has clinical anxiety to it. So if your body's like mine, I suggest that you don't just do this protocol. I'm prescribed psych meds. I have to have psych meds because it gives me an emotional foundation. You know, diet, sleep, exercise, meditation, yoga, support, anything that you need to do because you have an edgy nervous system. Okay. Think of a brain like that as like a person who has a walking problem. Like maybe you were born with problems walking and then you need a prosthetic. You need a wheelchair. You need a crutch. You need a walk, something like that. You need these things. Okay. And I wouldn't expect you to not ever need them. So I don't want, because the brain, the mind is like, oh, I'm looking for a magic cure that will make me all of a sudden like everybody else, and I'm going to be peaceful for the rest of my life. Because I was born with these conditions and I'm just looking for a magic pill cure. I tell people if you want that, people sell Xanax or you can keep drinking. You can do that because that's the only answer. No, something like that. Okay. So, and I could say that if you're all the way to one side of the spectrum, because there are people that'll say, "Oh, I was like that. I'm not like that anymore because I started taking some miraculous supplement or miraculous psych med. You should try it too." Or I changed my, diet to just eating kale. And I believe those people. I believe them. I used to be like that. I'm not like that anymore. I believe you when you say that. But what I'm saying is, I wouldn't necessarily consider you on the severe end of the spectrum. You may think you are, but there are people that are more severe than that because I've done all these things. I did every single thing for 30 years that everybody told me to do. All these miraculous cures, stuff like that. Never took it away until somebody told me it's because of this. Your brain is shaped that way, and it wasn't a mistake because you're an inheritor of generational trauma. God needed you to be this way. So you can be the emotional purge of all this unresolved trauma of your ancestry and stuff. So once I understood that, I realized like, oh, I was trying to change a mistake that God never saw as a mistake in the first place. I saw it as a mistake, because I couldn't function well in society. And that's what I was using to judge myself as normal or not. So what I'm saying is, if you're extreme on the one end of the spectrum and you're like me, 56 years old, trying everything you can for 30, 40 years, and you're still like this, and you realize you need to manage it for the rest of your life, and this can be a tool for that. I still strongly suggest to do other things, anything that you need to do, exercise, nature, spiritual retreats, journaling, therapy, psych meds. Yeah, the list goes on and on and on and on. And every single month, there's somebody with a new thing. And I suggest to try them all if it works for you. Okay. This is a tool that can supplement that. It's not designed to replace it. Okay. Like I said, I do other things, but people tell me it really did resolve a lot of my fear and anxiety in one shot and stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this meditation protocol. The specific emotion that I'm going to work on is primal fear of survival. Because honestly, when there's some kind of violent back and forth of two sides and neither side is willing to give, it's usually because each side is seeing the other side as an existential threat to their very survival, and the terror comes up in both sides. This inability to not resolve terror and fear, and therefore the mind gives when the mind is like that, it goes into survival mode. When the mind is operating on intense, severe fear and terror, it goes into survival mode, and when it does that, it gives you very limited options for resolving the problem. All it tries to do is eliminate the trigger, that which it believes is causing the fear. Thus, the blaming and the anger and possible violence toward the other side. How do I know this? Because I would do this. I was like this. I was diagnosed borderline personality disorder, and I would, verbally attack my wife and stuff like that. Because the brain was trying to eliminate the trigger. It would get too triggered with terror and fear that was unresolved in there from my childhood and generational trauma, and the mind would go into this survival mode and try to eliminate the trigger. The trigger was not her. I should be very clear. The trigger wasn't her. The mind thought the trigger was how she was talking. My brain was trying to eliminate the way she was talking. Thus, I would say things that were permanently trying to shut her down from talking that way ever again, call her names, terrible, abusive, emotional stuff that I'm not proud of and stuff. But when I look back on it, I could see why. Because when your brain is stuck in this terror-based survival mode, it will do anything to eliminate that trigger so it doesn't have to feel that way. Because this terror-based survival mode is basically your body going to the physiological response of thinking it's going to die. Maybe intellectually, you can say to yourself intellectually, you're not going to die here. She's not going to try to kill you. But your body, when you have unresolved fear emotions in there from trauma or generational trauma or some core emotion of fear that you don't have resolved, your body, when triggered, will go into the physiological response of, oh my God, I'm going to die. And that is such an uncomfortable feeling. You want to end it. Like you just want to stop it and eliminate it and stuff. And therefore, your brain gives you very limited options for resolving it. Eliminate the trigger, get her to shut up now and forever. That's the other thing. I was not just trying to get her to shut up at that moment. I was trying to get her to shut up forever like that. Like, don't ever talk to me that way ever again. So you don't have to trigger this. So after I went through this protocol, though, I'm still in contact with her. We're divorced now because she couldn't stand it. And I don't blame her. But I still talk to her, and once in a while, still things will say come out between us in a conversation that would have in the past triggered that whole survival fear response because I have complex PTSD and borderline and stuff. But because of the protocol that I'm going to do tonight, when it happens, I have the thought of wanting to say, shut up. Don't ever say that to me again. How could you say that to me? I have those thoughts. They're still in there. The difference is the emotional intensity is like 90% less. And so I can just sort of see the thought and disregard it. I can finally say to myself, oh, that's my thought, my crazy little guy in my head and how he used to think. That's how I used to think. I could see it now and disregard it. And I realized, like, wow, when the emotion was so intense, I became that thought. I became that threatened guy that was acting like she was pulling a knife on me or something, which wasn't true. But my body was acting that way. So I heard once from a spiritual teacher, a huge leap forward in your spiritual growth is when you realize your thoughts were never referring to you. It's just the way your brain is, the way it creates emotions, and the way it goes around processing information and emotions and solving problems. But once you realize your brain is that your thoughts are just your brain thinking to itself, and you're able to separate yourself from it, that's a huge leap forward in your spiritual growth and your emotional growth, your mental health growth as well, right? And the only way to be able to separate yourself from it is you have to de-escalate the emotions behind it. Because the glue of those volatile thoughts and you is the emotions. If the emotions are too strong, those volatile thoughts of that are attacking me and I have to eliminate this trigger is going to be like super glue. You're not going to be able to like not identify with those thoughts. So we have to de-escalate the emotions however we can, not eliminate them. Again, like whenever sometimes people hear this, they're like, oh my God, you're turning us into zombies. I'm not turning you. I do not want you to be a zombie. If I wanted you to be a zombie, I'd tell you to go and get some Xanax or something like that, or drink. I would tell you to do that. Okay. Because that's what I did. Because I didn't want to feel anything, and as a result of that, it caused more problems and stuff. So I still want us to be human, but obviously I don't want our emotions and the thoughts behind them to get the better of us. And then now we can't even see straight. So I want to contribute to, like what I do. Peace, meditational peace in the world, emotional stability, resolving emotions. It doesn't matter. Notice I'm not talking about any particular group of people here. I'm talking about humanity as a species here. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the protocol. Part of it is resolving the emotional fear. The other part is something called a safe place meditation. Maybe you've done something like this before. It's designed for people who have been through trauma, and therefore somebody taught it to me and it worked. So what we're going to do, the meditation that resolves your fear, or it starts to resolve the fear. It's designed to greatly lessen your fear. Okay. And then we're going to do the safe place meditation along with that. And that hopefully the combination of the two will have the effect of decreasing the emotional anxiety, terror that your ego has stored up. Okay. Your body may still be ADHD, autistic, and have clinical anxiety and could still be edgy, but your ego, your personality will not have as much anxiety and fear in it. Okay. So I'm going to relax the body. We're going to bring up the meditational piece. We're going to work on resolving the fear or starting to resolve the fear, and then go into the safe place meditation. Okay. So I'm reading if anybody put any kind of comment in here. I mean, all of this is going to be online. Just look at the description. Uh, I put little snippets from these Wednesday live streams on this account. And in the description of those 7 to 60 second snippets is where you'll see the link for the whole meditation in here. Okay, so if you want to do this again, it'll be on there within a few days. Okay, so that's the talk. Thank you everyone for listening and coming on. And I invite you to stay on for this. Again, this is an emotional energy release meditation that's designed to de-escalate your anxiety and fear permanently. It's not designed to, again, not designed to get rid of it 100%, but we're looking for de-escalation of like 50 to 90% permanently. And so I invite you to DM me if you feel you've had an emotional, energetic shift towards peace, and DM me a few days or weeks from now, because I'd like to know if it's effective over time. You know, I don't want to just have people be peaceful now. I want to have people be peaceful moving forward for the rest of their lives. Okay, so I please tell me and report if it's working or not, because I do change the protocol. I change the wording of it if someone says like it wasn't quite working because you need to do this with it. So I'm totally willing to make adjustments based on what people are reporting for the purpose of, again, permanently de-escalating your unresolved emotional anxiety, fear, maybe even anger, like a good 50 to 90%.